Hi, everybody. Welcome back. This is John Malanka with United Patients Group. Be informed and be well. My guest today is Dr. Frank Ervolino out of Florida, also known as Dr. Frank to many of his friends. And we're going to talk about CBD, a topic that comes up quite a bit, but I'll give you a little background on Dr. Frank. Dr. Frank graduated from the prestigious Bastyr University in 1995 with a degree in naturopathic medicine. During this time, he not only studied Western herbal medicine, but also supplement industry formulations as well as manufacturing. His medical school training also emphasized biochemistry as well as physiology. In 1999, he completed the master's degree program in acupuncture and Chinese medicine at Bastyr University. And during this time, he learned Chinese herbal medicine and other plant-based medicines and how to merge the West into the Western and Eastern systems into one therapeutic approach. So Dr. Frank, always good to see you. Thanks for being back on the show.
Always good to see you, John. That sounded so good.
Did it?
Sounded better than I really am.
Well, you take me along with you. I'm out here in California and it's warm. It's warm. It's 95 degrees today. So I have.
Oh my God, it was only like 74 in Florida.
Yeah. So, well, good to see you on. We've talked about other stuff. We've worked together in the integrative oncology world. The topic of CBD and cannabinoids has come up quite a bit in our conversation. So that's why I invited you on. For our listeners, there are about 100, I'm going to say 130 to 150 cannabinoids in the cannabis plant, and plus or minus, because more are being discovered each and every day. A lot of them don't even have names yet, but they all have their certain use. The number one, the most popular cannabinoid, which we've heard about for years, is THC. People say the recreational part of the cannabis plant. We can talk about. I disagree. It's also part of the medical, but the THC gives you a psychoactive effect. Cannabidiol, CBD, which is you're seeing it everywhere, from gas stations to your local chiropractic office, dentist office, and and online and dispensaries and stuff like that. So let's talk about. You want to add anything to your? I'm going to turn off my. My emails, quit the beeping here, sorry. Do you want to add anything to your bio, or you want to go right into that? Because
I think the only thing I'd really add into my bio is something I'd probably say down the road anyway, which is that I run a very large, low-cost medical clinic in Florida. It has over 7,000 patients. So it's one of my most important qualifications, which is the ability to work with hundreds of patients a month, see what they're trying, see how it's working out, and being able to follow up with them a year later. Most people in the natural products industry have very little interaction on a clinical level. I have quite a bit of interaction on a clinical level, so it's given me an unusual window into this whole topic.
So you're an expert in a few different fields. How about that? Well versed. And I think it's great that you because most doctors, unfortunately, in this industry are just jumping into this industry and they really don't know much about formulations, dosings. It's not a one size fits all. And that's the one that scares me quite a bit. When you have a patient that will say, well, I know, Bill down the street has the same thing that I have, and so I'm going to use the same product that he's using. And that's not always the case. We've seen patients, and I'm certain you as well. It's not a one size. Some patients have success with one cannabinoid while the other one doesn't. I'm highly sensitive, as I was talking to you prior to the call. I'm highly sensitive to CBD, and they say in high doses, it's great for sleep. Well, last night I tried a new CBD product for that reason, and I was up till 4:30 in the morning. I usually go to bed around 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night and sleep the night. And so, that's how my body is. So, caffeine, butter, salt, alcohol, it's another thing that again, I'm sensitive to. And so can you let's talk about cannabinoids, one, but also the endocannabinoid system and why cannabis is coming to the forefront again right now, and the stigma is kind of starting to drop off. And a lot of that reason is because of the cannabinoid CBD, which we'll talk about.
Right. So hemp has a long history in herbal medicine going back thousands of years to be used as a medicinal. In the Chinese herbal pharmacy, the hemp seed was called Ma Zi, and the formula was called Ma Zi Ren Wan. And it was used to relax the intestinal system for constipation. And they said it would moisten the intestines. So we've known about hemp for a long, long time. And the use of THC was something that also has been around for a long time with different populations around the world that had access to it. And then myself being 68 in 2 months, I was part of that group in the United States in college who decided to try and figure out how much we could consume every day. And I certainly did do that. I was a child of the 60s and 70s, and I certainly had my day with marijuana. But what has come with some good research has been the identification of another component in the body that is part of the nervous system, or a complementary part of the nervous system. And they called it the endocannabinoid system because the cannabinoids from hemp or from marijuana had a particularly strong action on the system. Now, I get some people in my clinic, especially young people, who are like the third generation hippies. I had one guy say to me the other day, "Can you believe it? We were pre-programmed for pot." And I'm tried to tell him, no, we were not hardwired for pot. There's compounds in hemp and marijuana that we found out could have a huge effect. There's many things on the planet probably that can have a huge effect on the endocannabinoid system. We're just scratching the surface on that and on affecting the nervous system. So what's important to realize, though, is that some compounds will, I'll say, activate or aggravate receptor sites on the endocannabinoid system, while others will upregulate the whole system. And that's very interesting because they have different doses, different actions, different applications. So
with your, and this is actually, it's a good point, because, you know, with your third generation hippie that came in there, said we're pre-programmed, our bodies are programmed for pot, is the way he said it. What do you say about the patients that have an endocannabinoid deficiency, you know, and they're out of homeostasis, they're out of balance, and, you know, the cannabinoids bringing the body back to balance? You know, this is something that is in the news all the time. You have Dr. Raphael Mechoulam out of Israel. As we talks about this all the time. Are you? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
I'm not. That's his way of describing it.
Mm-hmm.
So, like the Chinese have a way of describing a cold. You know, like with a fever, it's wind heat, or a flu virus is often wind cold. So it's his way of describing, but it's not the way that I don't really like that description, because it says like that should be a component, the cannabinoids should be a component of your everyday life. And yes, that is a plant that has value, but there are other things that we still have things to find out about this endocannabinoid system. It wasn't designed specifically for cannabis or hemp components. They're just a molecule that seems to activate this part of the nervous system we didn't even know about. So there are people that do have deficiencies that affect their nervous system, that affect conduction of electricity in the nervous system, that affect mood, that affect the ability to minimize pain as an experience. those people, you could say they have a deficiency in the cannabinoid system, because if you give them cannabinoids, they're better. But we have yet to find out all the things in the world that actually activate the system. It's not proprietary to the cannabinoids. So that's my response. And then there is the other end of the spectrum on THC, which is a cannabinoid. I forget her first name, but Professor Trotsky out of Mexico, who was the daughter of the famous Russian politician, did some landmark work on THC consumption and the reduction of dopamine as a neurotransmitter in the brain. And you see that in people that consume too much. So you got on one end too little,
Yeah.
and on the other end too much, which brings me, a guy who has studied Chinese medicine, to the concept of Zen. Where's the balance? What's the balance? What's the healthy balance? Too much can be a little bit undesirable. Too little can be undesirable. Does that answer your question, John?
Yeah, and so you do see, there's back to the different, systems in the body. You said, it just goes on and on. You have your nervous system, your immune system, your renal system, endocrine system, and then what a lot of people have, as you were mentioning, with the endocannabinoid system, again, bringing the body back to balance, helps with pain, helps with anxiety and stress. And so is this just another little bump in the system that will, help with those types? Is that what you're looking at it? Because
it's like receptors that we really didn't know about, a system of receptors. And these receptors, these cannabinoid receptors, are all linked, and they all have direct connection to the brain. And that's what was so fascinating about it, was that it had direct connection, and it was a system of receptors. And can you give me 1 minute, John? I just have to plug in this charger here. I didn't. Just a,
and one. Yep.
So it's an adjunctive system that we didn't know about, that has an effect on the nervous system and on what the brain sees. Like, and it's very profound in like epilepsy, where the brain is processing electrical signals that are going to go into the central nervous system. And then all of a sudden there's like a glitch in the system. And so then you get an attack. But for some reason, when you activate the endocannabinoid system, it inhibits that, either the action that brought on the attack or the attack itself. They're still looking at that. They still really don't know that mechanism.
Well, I'm always one to share that, more is not always better as well. And so you can have a success with 2 milligrams. Other patients may need 500 to 2,000 milligrams, depending on how their body reacts. And as I mentioned earlier in the show here, my body's very sensitive to different things. And CBD is one of them. I have to, be careful what time of day. I mean, there's times, as I mentioned, I've taken high doses at night for sleep, and it works extremely well. Last night, did the same dose with a different product, and I was up all night. And so why does that do that? I know, let's get into, before you and I can go on for hours about the different cannabinoids, the benefits of THC, again, which I am a fan of for attacking serious diseases like cancer. And you may even mention epilepsy. We work with a lot of epileptic families with their children, pediatric, and you can have CBD. And CBD is wonderful. And you'll have 25-30% success. Add minute amount of THC, and that success rate with a lot of these patients and families that I work with will have a 70% success rate, stopping these seizures. So I want people to realize THC is not bad. It's like going out and wine tasting. You can have a sip of wine, great, or you can have 3 bottles of wine and you're gonna be drunk. And the same thing with THC and these other cannabinoids.
Look at THC and hunger in seriously ill patients. It does a great job of that. And, it's interesting too, because part of the problem is that we're looking at CBD as this sort of one size fits all compound. And there's differences in manufacturing that can account for effectiveness. There's also, in each person, there are, there's a vast number of what's called gene alleles, which are switches, genetic switches. And two of the biggest, most widely known gene alleles in medical literature, I forget the numbers. The one gene allele I think is number 62, and it's the one that processes caffeine. It has to do with the P450 enzyme system. So if you have the switch on one way, you can drink coffee right before you go to bed. If the switch is the other way, you can drink coffee at 12 o'clock in the afternoon and be up all night. Another one is the gene allele for garlic.
So let me ask you about the switch, because back in my coffee days, and I haven't had coffee in 3 years, but back I used to live in Belgium, and so we would drink coffee like it was water with coffee and chocolate, coffee and chocolate, and it rained every day, so that's another reason why we did that. But I would have a cup of coffee, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night, and go right to bed. And so, but now I wouldn't chance it because sleep's important to me. So does that switch go on and off as
Absolutely goes on and off. The switches in the immune system go on and off. You will find a person that in their early life, before they hit puberty, they will have terrible allergies. And then after they hit puberty, they will go maybe 40 years without allergies. And then in their later stages of life, they'll get the allergies back.
Wow.
Yeah, and garlic is the one. Some people can eat garlic and it'll come out of their pores. Other people can eat garlic and it won't affect them at all. It's a gene allele. It's a switch. So we have a lot of switches that determine whether THC is going to work better for us or not, whether CBD is going to work better for us or not. It's very interesting.
I don't even know if you know how we started United Patients Group. Back in 2011, when my friend's dad, my father-in-law, was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer metastasized to his brain, and he was given weeks to live. And we knew nothing about the benefits of the cannabis plant, but while in that oncologist office, he was on full-time oxygen. We asked how much time do we have, and they shared, weeks. And we asked, what about cannabis for appetite stimulation, not knowing anything else. And his doctor said, go for it. You have a couple of weeks. And we ended up finding him a coconut oil capsule with raw and heated cannabis in there, both THC and CBD, CBDA, THCA, about 3 milligrams. Within 24 hours he was eating. We said, fantastic, he'll pass peacefully. Day 2, day 5, day 8, now he's off his oxygen, walking around. 6 months, hospice fires him as a patient. And then we started incorporating the other cannabinoid I was talking about, THC, into this. Again, small amount, about 25 milligrams at night before bed. And at 9 months, he went and got scanned and received his first scan. It came back with no evidence of recurrent disease. And we're 2020 right now, and he's still alive, and he's had, I believe, 18, 19 lung and brain scans. So getting away from the CBD topic, it's not a one size fits all. What works for one patient may not work for the other. If he was on a straight CBD regimen, I know for a fact he would not be here today. So THC was needed. And as you mentioned earlier, CBD, I don't want to say I don't want to give anybody any false hope, but I don't want to say this is the golden pill, the golden ticket. It will cure. I'll never use the word cure, because you can't even cure a common cold. But
right. Well, remembering that THC is one of the cannabinoids.
So that worked with us, where others have seen success with 1-to-1 ratios. And so, this is the topic that comes up, and you and I were talking about this before. Each cannabinoid has their own purpose, and they work well with each other in unison. It's called the entourage effect. It's like baking a cake and leaving out the the eggs or the flower, and so they all work well with each other.
Right.
Is there a psychoactive effect? Do any of your patients have psychoactive effects with CBD?
Well, helped develop a product,
Uh-huh.
and we were manufacturing it from from hemp that was farmed in California in Salinas. And then we had all this, what you would call throwaway plant material. And we decided to just make a regular water extraction out of it and drink this garbagey plant material that wasn't useful for processing. And we gave it to some animals. They liked it. We gave it to some people. They thought it was, you know, a little herby, planty tasting, which isn't a favorite with people. But there was a general consensus that even though there was supposed to be very little THC in this, like none, and there was supposed to be almost no CBD, there was a relaxing effect by both animals and humans. And it would be hard to make it because you can only pick, like, at least in California, CBD twice a year, or hemp, I mean, twice a year. But it begs the question as to what other components are in the plant that are contributing. And this goes to the entourage effect of, you talked about an entourage effect of CBDs, but entourage effect really came from the plant medicine world, where we continually started finding plants that could do things. Like yew tree bark had a very, very beneficial effect in breast cancer. So then a drug company goes and takes the yew tree bark and makes Taxol out of it. They brought out the main constituent. This happens all the time. But one of the things that we've consistently seen is that when you separate a component out of a plant, you lose a lot of other components that were complementary to that plant. So the entourage effect to me means the whole plant.
Great.
The whole plant. And at the company that I helped develop the product for, the CBD product, we also found out that the most common methods of CBD manufacture were resulting in CBD 1 and 2, which really, to me, are almost man-made compounds. They're made by the decarboxylation process. And their method of action was to directly on the cannabinoid sites. Sort of like an irritating activation of the cannabinoid sites. What we found was that the natural form of CBD, the main form, CBDA,
Yep.
did not act directly on the site. What it did was it upregulated the whole CBD endocannabinoid, I mean, not CBD, but the endocannabinoid system. It upregulated the system. So your own neurotransmitters worked, your own cell signalers worked well on the endocannabinoid system. I saw that was more effective than directly on the endocannabinoid sites. And I saw that it worked a lot more. It's the more natural product. And in making that product, we kept everything in the product except for the fiber and the protein, because proteins or lectins are the things that people are going to have the most allergic reactions to. So we took out the protein in the extraction, took out the fiber. We ended up with the chlorophyll, all the other components of the plant, all the complementary components. It's a more natural form of CBD.
And so leading into that, is all CBD the same? Because this is a topic that comes up all the time. You have the cannabis people, laws have changed, and now they're having, being able to breed out the THC. Now extraction companies are able to literally shake out and literally pull out the other cannabinoids and leaving in, CBD. I am a big fan of CBDA and THCA, and those that are just tuning into the show. That's the raw portion of the plant. So it's basically like wheatgrass, remember in the 70s,
Right.
80s, everyone would juice wheatgrass. So if you have a cannabis plant in your backyard and it's a high THC or high CBD plant, it's raw, you can juice that, take it as a wheatgrass shot or a cannabis shot, non-psychoactive, great for inflammation. And that's the acid form, not LSD acid, but acid form, the raw form.
The raw form is acidic in nature.
Yeah.
And I totally agree with you, John. Those are the natural forms. When you start changing them, when you start processing them heavily, you're going to strip out components that were, in my mind, were meant to be there in nature. And we talked off camera, I think, about, well, maybe we did this on camera, about some people that are trying to treat epilepsy with CBD, and there's a percentage that has success and a percentage that doesn't. I've seen a higher success with the more natural CBDA acidic component, that kind of an extract. So to me, CBDA is more exciting, and so is a THCA. They're the natural, found in nature forms of these two medical components. And that's the way nature intended them. And I don't like the heavy processing. I'm not a big fan of CBD 1 and 2. I'm not a big fan of decarboxylation processes either.
Well, it's funny. I had a friend of mine, a doctor, on the show, and he said, the first documented case of cannabis was 5,000 plus years ago. And he said, well, first off, they didn't know how to document anything, 5,500 years. So that was the thing. And then he said, here's the point. They didn't discover fire for the longest time either. So maybe that's why they always went raw, with the raw plants until they.
You could say that. But, I liken that more towards, if you really think back even a couple of thousand years ago, there were no lights, there were no TVs, there were no highways, there were no cars. There was like a donkey.
Isn't that nice? I mean, we're having that right now. We're at home. I'm not liking the traffic that comes back.
What somebody did was, somebody that had survived for a while and was considered an elder would probably put a big heavy robe on before the sun went down, take a person who's a little bit younger out, take them to the edge of the forest. We didn't have cultivated crops back then. So you took a younger person to the edge of the forest and you pointed and said, you can eat that. And it might have been an onion. You can eat that. And it might have been rapini, like a wild broccoli. Yeah. And then if you get a cold, you can chew that, or you can make it into a tea. And if you get pain, you can chew on this. And so this is how these medicines got discovered. And then somebody said, well, let's find out what component of that plant makes the pain go away. And let's pull it out, and we've got a better thing. In that case, aspirin is salicylic acid, which is in a lot of plants. Okay. And what are we finding out? Taking aspirin will eventually corrode your stomach if you take your baby aspirin every day, which can be another cause of death. So I like to have, I'm not telling people to go out to the edge of the forest if they have pain and start chewing plants. I mean, we have plant medicine that you can access. But I like the entourage effect. To me, is the whole, as much of the plant as you can. Plant. It's as little, it's as insignificantly denatured as possible. So you don't want to denature the plant. And that's what I think a lot of people are doing in the CBD manufacture. I think the machines are very inexpensive. You can make huge quantities. It's in an oil then, usually. Now they're responding and make it into powders and stuff, but they've got to reprocess it to do that. Well, what we did when we looked into this was say, how can we just take the plant and how can we end up with everything but the protein, which is usually reactive, and the fiber, which is bulky. Yeah. And if you look at one of our capsules, it's green because the chlorophyll is still in there.
Which I'm a big fan of. And again, I like you, I'm not a big fan of the isolates. And a lot of companies are coming to start, making these isolates. Before we move on, I love your description of I'm a visual person, and seeing the elder in his robe, taking the young one out. But we've had this conversation with my friends, like, who discovered how to truly eat artichokes because
Right.
it's like,
Right.
don't eat that one. You have to pull the leaves off, then. But if you get to the middle, the heart, but make sure you pull all the hairs off. We were out to dinner with some people one time, and we had some business colleagues that came in, and I kid you not, they started pulling the leaves off and chewing it, and they're like, oh. I'm like, have you not eaten? They said, we've never even seen this before. And I said, no, you do this. And they're like, I'll be darned. I would never have known that. But they were like looking at us like, should we need to be polite? Can we spit it out? And, but we had a good laugh.
Yeah. Well, I'm Italian and I make artichokes during the winter and into the spring.
Carciofini.
I make them maybe every week.
Yeah. Oh, delicious.
And I'm the fastest choke puller there is.
Are you?
Yeah. So, but if you've ever watched Survivor,
yeah,
I could just imagine somebody looking at a bunch of artichokes, on the edge of a forest and going, I'm hungry as heck, and I didn't catch anything.
Yeah.
I'm going to see what these things are like if I stick them in a bag of boiling water.
Yeah.
It's
like the stinging nettles. You can't touch them, but you can put them in your boiling water. Make tea out of it.
Yes. And I'll give you this great little story. I lived in the Pacific. I lived in Seattle for 20 years. Okay. Stinging nettle heaven. And my daughter, I was an herbalist, and I learned from some of the Native American women that you could eat the fresh tops of the nettle and it wouldn't sting. So me and my daughter, who was like 7 at the time, we would go out and play this form of Russian roulette. We'd, pick a top and eat it. And the loser would get the stinging part because they picked something that was a little too mature.
Too much.
Yeah.
So did she learn the hard way, or was she a quick learner?
We both learned the hard way.
Yeah, I was gonna say I think you both are quick learners. CBD, I can talk with you all day. I love all these talks with you. This topic always comes up, about hemp CBD versus cannabis CBD. I was on that side until about 2 years ago when I went and toured a hemp farm, and I was blown away. To me, hemp was for industrial hemp, clothing, ropes, backpacks, bags, etc. And at that point, not medicine. I know they can't say medicine, but went out, saw the field, touched it, smelt it, tasted it, said, I'll be darned, and it is actually the cannabis plant with legal limits now, if you want to say, without the
different species, yeah.
So is CBD? I mean, we're both Italian. Tomatoes, and I always use the description: Roma tomatoes, heirloom tomatoes, beefsteak tomatoes. They're tomatoes, but they're all different. And is that the same? What's your definition of?
Yeah, I think, I know a lot of people disagree with me, but I think that CBDA is CBDA, no matter where you get it. The problem with the CBD, there could be some different chemical components in there, some little nuances, but I think that they're pretty much the same. I guess I'm not big on processing food or processing herbal medicine. You do have to process it to get the THC out if you're using a high THC. Now they're starting to hybridize out the THC. And that's fine. That's a really great skill. I think it's, to me, the same. I think that the US government was leaning more towards hemp CBD because they had seen some research that I've seen, and that came out of Trotsky, who then went to work for the FDA, about decrease in dopamine concentrations in people that use a lot of THC. And I've seen some of these people. And so I think they wanted to go with the safer version of the CBDA, which needs a tiny bit of THC to activate it. And that's what you get in the hemp. So it was an easier solution than growing THC growing the marijuana cannabis indica and
Yeah.
sativa, and then pulling the THC out. But now the hybridized versions are taking care of that. I don't know where the government's going to come out on it, but I know that CBDA is a very good compound for people. I mean, I take a lot of like young people off of Xanax and Effexor and Prozac using CBDA.
We're using CBDA. You
Yeah.
know, you were talking about you've seen people like with people with too much THC. You know, again, back too much is is not more is not always better. And so, you know, I've been to conferences, you know, these cannabis conferences in California, here in California or Colorado, and you're seeing people getting sick, and it's the hyperemesis where too much THC in this system, where it will make you throw up. And as an I wasn't going to go there, but the anti-venom that you can use, just like a snake venom, is CBD. And it's amazing. I've been with people, you know, where next thing you know, it's like, here, start dragging off this, you know, vaporizer pen or the tincture. Vaporizer pen, the reason it's quicker acting than putting a tincture in your mouth. But you know, when they had too much, they said, I'm going to take more. It's like having too much alcohol. Here, you got to drink some more to get to sober you up. It's like you're out of your mind. And so did that, and you can see the body just come back to balance. So if anybody has too much THC, it's not something you can throw up like if you have alcohol.
Now, I know that I reached a point where when I, you know, prior to that, when I was in college and everything, if I would use some marijuana, you know, I'd have as good a time as anybody. I'd want to, you know, go eat some food. I'd want to laugh it up. I'd want to drink a beer. And then something happened where I got some signal, I guess, where I would, you know, use this marijuana and all of a sudden get completely paranoid. And where it really came to light was when I took a group of friends in Seattle into the Olympic Mountains. And we went way, way up on one of the top 10 backpacking climbs in the nation, the Robin and Tuck Lakes up in the Olympics. And we're way up in this splendor. And these, you know, marijuana is legal there. And these guys pull out a little joint. And I said, well, what the heck? You know, I've been busy being a doctor and raising kids, but I'm on vacation. And I was enjoying all this splendor. I took a couple of puffs off that thing. Within about 15 minutes, I was not having fun. And I just realized that my body had changed to the point where I could not tolerate the THC. And so we do change. Does that mean that because I don't have fun with it, nobody else should use it? No, I see people having a lot of fun with it. I think it should be legal just to cut a lot of red tape and a lot of problems for people. But the CBD portion is a good antidote to anybody who has a little too much THC. And the CBD portion has, to me, a broader spectrum of medical possibilities. The THC has its possibilities for medicine. They're very well defined. There's some we haven't understood, but I don't think it's an equal of CBDA when it comes to helping people overcome stabilize mental emotionally, or not have as much pain, or to have a modulating effect on the nervous system for like epilepsy, things like that.
With your patients, do you recommend it as a daily vitamin, daily vegetable? You know, are you
for a pain patient? Yes.
Anyway, for sleep, anxiety, even just health and wellness.
Well, I go.
Information.
You know, I go by person. I mean, I have some people that did not do well on the CBD.
Yeah.
CBDA. I don't use the CBD 1 or 2. I use the CBDA. And I've had some people that have not done well on it. But it's extremely good for people that were put on antidepressants.
Yeah.
Because the antidepressants, sorry guys, you put a lot of money into them, but with the vast majority of people, they don't work after a while. In fact, the people get worse.
Yeah.
So, and then a lot of these people have trouble sleeping. And so when I put them on as little as 10 milligrams of CBDA once a day, they smooth out.
Hmm.
Smooth out on paranoia, anxiety, depression, and they can get off their pharmaceutical, which is not doing them any good.
And in the I guess the way you offer them the CBDA, is it in tincture form? How are you offering it? Is it in the
that's I don't have a bottle of it here because I sell out of it to the point where I often will give my bottle away to somebody in the clinic. But what we have, I'm just going to show you because you just see the form we have. We have a capsule form.
So let's
it's a capsule form.
What is your product?
I'm sorry. This is the professional version. It's called Complete Spectrum, and it comes in 10 milligrams and 20 milligrams. It's encapsulated. And then the retail versions are called Green Power 10, Green Power 20. The reason why we started with a capsule was through some research I did at conferences, both patient conferences for cancer and practitioner conferences, where I asked people, do you like to take a liquid? Do you like to vape? Do you like to, what would you find more convenient, a capsule, vape, or liquid? It was almost 85% capsule. We are a capsule-oriented society. And I heard stories about liquid being spilled in a purse, spilled on clothes, an awkwardness in a professional setting of trying to dose yourself. Vaping ran into its own little problems where there's questions about lung health. So people like capsules. So we brought it out in capsules, and it's a powder. We can make it into several forms, but when you think about the price component of a supplement, the CBD is the cheapest part of this supplement. The next expensive part is the label. The next expensive part is the bottle. And somewhere in between those two is the shipping of the heavy liquid and breakage. So you get a bottle of capsules, it's light. More of the money is spent on the supplement. The powder we make is more expensive than the liquid, the decarboxylated liquid. So we get to put more of the
product.
Yeah, more into the product. It's an expensive proprietary food solvent based extract.
Yeah. And everyone, I'll put the link below of this of the Dr. Frank, and actually you're partnered with David Wales, correct, in this, or is this a different product?
Yes, David Wales and Rick Jenke from American Biosciences brought me into work on this project, almost 10 years ago.
Yeah, and so I've known David, I want to say, God, goodness, 6 years maybe, 5-6 years, from the integrative oncology world. And so I remember when he was getting into this, and glad to see you guys are still doing this as well.
Well, how we got into it was very interesting. At least the story I was told was that the farmers, we had this manufacturing plant for this other cancer product that we have, and they were talking to the farmers around Salinas, where the plant was at the time. And the farmers were telling them, look, we're getting the go-ahead. We're being told we're going to be able to grow hemp as a cash crop. You're a company that can manufacture. Would you consider buying our hemp and make, so the farmers came to us. It was very interesting. Sure enough, they were right. That's when the U.S. Department of Agriculture got that ruling that farmers could grow hemp as a cash crop in this country. And it coincided with the surge in legal marijuana and the surge in CBD use. I feel bad for some people who are taking products that I know are not as effective. They've got a cute little method of presentation. I've seen CBD in honey with little bare plastic jars with strawberry flavor. And that's all fine and well, but I don't think it's usually a very dilute decarboxylated liquid. And I'd rather see them upregulate their system so that they get a better effect with the CBDA.
Yeah, and I am a fan of the acid forms of that, and it's frustrating because especially out here in California, anywhere, the majority, and I talk about this on my show all the time, the majority of the hemp, probably until recently, but maybe even still to this day, but the majority of the hemp out there is the same hemp. I mean, you and I can go down and buy a 55-gallon drum. I can, we have a lot of money for marketing. We can put our label, slap our label on it, and go sell it. Where, Sue down the road has the same product, and just put a different label, and they're reselling it. And so it's
almost a forbidden subject. You bring it up, and the pushback is huge.
Yeah. So I always share with our followers and patients, ask questions. Make sure it's U.S. grown. I'm a fan of that. Regulations are different overseas than they are here in the States. Mm-hmm. Make sure it's tested, and they test. You, at the patient, don't have to, and the consumer, you don't have to be in charge of the testing. The company that you're buying from, as well as the company that you're buying it, the company, the product that you're buying it from, the manufacturer or the dispensary should have test results on that. Ask for these test results. It should be mandatory. It's a regulation.
You're right. In fact, one of the things that I saw is we spend a lot of money on this product.
Yeah. And
then we priced it out. And one of the things that sort of had me going, is that they're taking this generalized liquid CBD 1 and 2 product that was, I think, sort of man-made through the decarboxylation process. And they're sort of putting fancy labels on it and fancy bottles and calling it all sorts of things like full spectrum and everything. And then they're charging more for the product than we're charging for what I think is a more natural version that was very expensive to make. I think a lot of groups are marking this up. Yeah. And so I see this because I don't go to the clinic every day, but we average 150 patient visits a week. That's a lot of patients. That's 600 a month. And we have a lot of cancer patients, a lot of pain patients. And what I notice is they're all trying to sell me this CBD 1 and 2 because they got it from a friend and it's the best. And they're all trying to get me to carry it. And then I check back with them in about 3 or 4 months and they're not using it anymore. Or I don't have to check with some of the people that switched over to the CBDA because they keep buying bottles. And we price it. I sell it, I might be underselling it, but I sell it for about $36 a bottle for a 1 month supply. So,
which brings you back to what your clinic is all about, is low cost medical guide. And when you say clinic, just show everybody, Dr. Frank, it's not a cannabis clinic, it's a medical clinic.
No, yeah, it's a medical clinic. And what I did was, when I was at Jupiter Hospital, I handled a lot of cancer. I handled a lot of autoimmune diseases. I handled a lot of idiopathic depression, anxiety, things like that. And I was giving, I had a clinic in a hospital, and I was really getting one-on-one with the patient. To be honest, I sort of burned out. When you have 30 or 40 people that you care about at once, you burn out. So then I started this clinic, and rather than having to spend 45 minutes with a patient, which you could do most of the stuff for the patient within 15 to 20 minutes. I decided to start this low-cost acupuncture clinic because, for one thing, it would be acupuncture, which I'm very good at. But for another thing, it would sort of screen people from seeking me from Miami, driving two hours up and saying, help me, deliver me from this disease. It's just a huge load. So what I did was, people were coming in, they're like, I've got a bad shoulder, or I can't salivate because I've got an autoimmune condition, or I've got rheumatoid arthritis, or I'm depressed. And then I could turn around and say, I have some time for a patient. I can get a little deeper in. And what happened was, I thought I'd get a few patients per day. We ended up with 7,000 patients. and we end up being full all the time. And I have some wonderful practitioners, some acupuncturists. They're maybe not as innovative as me because I'm older and I've got a medical degree, but we sit down and we talk all the time. They'll call me up. What are you doing? What should we do? What more should we add? How can you help this person? So it's worked out really well for my community. So we only charge $20 to $40 a visit, and we refuse extra money, but invariably we get money from patients. Like I think right now we're sitting on about $5,000 to pay for people who can't afford treatment, or to pay for, like we paid one woman's electric bill for 6 months in advance. She has breast cancer, she lost her job, she's getting some assistance. I came in and paid her electric bill. Makes me feel good. It makes me feel like I'm really a doctor. So sorry about that rant.
No, I mean, that's, I experienced cancer with my wife, and so when you're in there, your world just comes crashing down on you, and, I work with cancer patients all the time that don't have anybody.
God bless you.
And don't have anybody. It's like, are you alone? I'm alone doing this. And it hurts because, I would have done it for another 500 years, get up, spend, 2 hours of sleep a night, up and down, up and down, up and down, making sure she was comfortable, and so what you're doing, because, your world becomes rocked when you hear those words, you have cancer. And
yes, in fact, one of my practitioners had a lump in her throat that was affecting her swallowing. They went in to remove part of her thyroid. They came out and they told her she had anaplastic thyroid, which is immediately stage 4. This woman, a month before, had no perception of any problem.
Yeah.
Now she's told she has anaplastic stage 4. I was there on my off day today treating her because she needs the kind of attention,
totally.
special kind of attention. So to end a bad story, she just actually found out she had, with these new wonderful tests, she had a mutation that they can treat successfully.
Oh, good.
So I'm hoping that she'll be back as a practitioner. I didn't want to get the little violins out for me.
Yeah. Well, anybody going through something as serious as that, I send everybody.
Well, I'm going to be 68 in 2 months. I mean,
I know. I was going to say happy birthday to you too. And so,
that also means, you've got to think about your own self and bless yourself that I'm able to go on the floor and treat 14 patients in 4 hours, in the clinic. That's how we do it. Yet I never push anybody out of their spot in the clinic. If a person needs an hour and a half to 2 hours with the acupuncture needles, I'll let them go. And it's very interesting.
Well, I need to make it out your way to get treatment, because I'm a fan of acupuncture as well.
There's awesome clinics like mine right near you in San Francisco.
Yeah, I know. I have a great acupuncture site here too. So, well, Frank, I always appreciate you being on the show and learning about what you're doing, what you've done in the background. And your
sure.
I grew up. My dad was in banking, so we grew up in Asia. And so
wow.
I'm a big fan of Chinese medicine. I'm a big fan of herbal medicine, Western medicine, alternative medicines. And so if you can bring an arsenal to get your body back into homeostasis and balance, why not? Again, I'm alive because of Western medicine and probably pharmaceuticals, but cannabis and other natural herbs are a lot easier on the gut, as you were talking about.
And whatever works is the most natural.
Totally.
Whatever's the least force to make the patient well. If that's a pharmaceutical, that is the least force. Unfortunately, sometimes we try and solve some chronic health conditions with a pharmaceutical sledgehammer, and you get problems out of that. Let me tell you, the first time I ever got acupuncture was I had a friend who owned a Vietnamese market in downtown Seattle, Viet Hoa. And I knew this guy real well from my before I became a doctor. I was in investments. And when I had these terrible allergies, and he said, "Oh, come down to the store. We have this world famous Vietnamese acupuncturist that works at my store, and he'll treat you." So I go down there and I go to my friend, "Where's this acupuncturist?" And he starts screaming down the aisle of this huge market in Vietnamese. And there's this little guy sweeping the aisle with a white apron on. The guy responds and he says, "Come here," in Vietnamese. And Guy puts his apron down, puts his broom down. He had a long white beard, and he goes, "This is the world famous acupuncturist." I go, "Why is he sweeping the aisles?" He goes, "Well, we brought him over from Vietnam, and he doesn't like to sit there. If he doesn't have a patient, he wants to do something. He's like our uncle." And so he takes me in this little closet, and he goes to do acupuncture, and he pulls these old needles out of like some alcohol or something, like in a barber shop with the old combs.
Yeah, barbers all
I'm
there.
like, what the heck is that? So I get up and I run out to the market and I go, "Give me a box of those needles." And I bought a box of disposable needles and I gave them to him. I thought he was going to cry, and he treated me, and I was like, "This stuff works really well." And he also gave me an herbal formula with bugs in it that it'd make into a tea. But I've since learned that those bugs are really good for calming the immune system down that causes allergic rhinitis.
And again, the bugs was probably the elder in his robe taking the young youth out and saying, "These are the bugs you can eat. These are the bugs you
crush these beetles and make them into a disgusting tea."
So,
That made my allergies go away. I've since learned how to do it without the bugs for my patients.
oh, good.
Anyway, it's been great being with you, John.
Yeah, Frank, thank you so much. Dr. Frank Ervolino, happy birthday.
Ervolino, that's right.
How can people get a hold of you if they want, if anybody's interested?
Well, the best way to do it is to go to my website. The best way to do it is to put my name on there so they can see the last name. Just Google Dr. Frank Ervolino, and you will see all the contact info. My clinic is called Treasure Coast Community Acupuncture, and my
Out of Florida.
In Florida, and my email is clinic@stuartcommunity.com, and that's STUART community.com. That's my direct email, clinic@stuartcommunity.com.
Well, fantastic. Dr. Frank, always a pleasure seeing you, talking with you, working with you, and we'll get you back on the show.
Yeah.
This is John Malanka with the United Patients Group. Be informed and be well. Have a blessed day, my friend.
All right. Thank you.
And happy birthday to you.
Yeah, it's coming up.
Cool. Take care, huh?
Yes.
Bye-bye.